Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's telephone town hall with Congressman Adam Smith. During this event, we'll be taking questions from constituents like you. So to ask a question, simply press star 3 on your telephone keypad. And during this call, you can also sign up to receive our newsletter by pressing star 6. Again, please press star 3 to ask a question and star 6 to subscribe to the newsletter. With that, I'll turn it over to Congressman Smith. Congressman, the floor is yours, sir.
Well, thank you very much, Dirk. I appreciate it. And thank you all for joining us this evening for this conversation. Just two things I'm going to cover in my opening remarks, and then I'll turn it over to your questions. One is the ongoing budget battle as we passed the October 1st end of the fiscal year and the government shutdown fight. And then second, some of the things that are going on with the U.S. military that I find concerning. As the ranking member on the Armed Services Committee, I want to pay particular attention to that. But starting with the current shutdown budget fight, I want to make sure people understand what is going on, because there's sort of two really big issues surrounding this. First of all, President Trump and the Republicans in the House and the Senate have put in place over the course of the last, 9 months, I guess, of the president's term, the most partisan, aggressive budget I've ever seen since my time in Congress. It reflects exclusively the priorities of the president and of the Republican Party, and has been really very partisan. It's excluded the Democrats from that whole conversation. And those budget priorities include, massive tax cuts, primarily for the wealthy, that have increased the deficit by, will increase the deficit by almost $4 trillion over that time frame, while at the same time making severe cuts to a number of programs, most notably healthcare, which I'll say more about in a minute. But cuts to Medicaid, cuts to the Affordable Care Act have all had an impact and increased the cost of insurance for a lot of people and priced a lot of people out of the market and driven them off of insurance, with more to come if this budget continues to be implemented. But it's not just healthcare. The president has fired hundreds of thousands of federal employees. He has also frozen hundreds of billions of dollars in federal programs that have been approved by Congress. He has blocked transportation projects. He has blocked green energy projects, primarily in Democratic states, well, actually almost exclusively in Democratic states. He has completely shut down the USAID and cut our foreign aid to pretty close to nothing. He has eliminated the Department of Education and made cuts across the board in just about every spot you can imagine. Scientific research, we've seen some of the impacts on CDC and NIH, cuts to grants to a number of our universities. And so it has been a really aggressive budget that I, and frankly, no other Democrat that I'm aware of, supports. Now, to a certain extent, if you've got the votes, you vote. And the president and his party control the House and the Senate and the White House. And so this is what they've chosen to implement. But now they run into a situation where, in order to continue this budget, and that's the fight, the Republicans are trying to pass a continuing resolution, which basically is not full appropriations bills. It just continues the budget as it currently exists in the hope that eventually we will negotiate appropriations bills. But in order to pass that, according to the rules of the Senate, they need 60 votes, which means that at a minimum, they need 7 Democrats. And my position on this, I think, is perfectly reasonable. They've put together this incredibly partisan budget that we sincerely feel bad for the country. It's certainly bad on healthcare. It's bad on the debt and the deficit. It's bad on a whole series of issues. And again, if they have the votes and they want to vote for that, that's fine. But now they're saying to Democrats that we somehow have to vote for their budget. But there's only one flaw in that theory. We don't have to vote for their budget. We can vote no. And if they want to get Democratic votes, well, then they can make changes and address our concerns. As an elected member of Congress, it's my obligation to vote for what I think is in the best interests of my constituency. I actually got into a brief heated argument with Chris Cuomo on News Nation the other day when he implied that it was my job to vote for this. It's not my job to vote for whatever the Republicans put out there, even if I think it is deeply damaging to my constituents. So all we are asking right now is for the Republicans to negotiate with us. If they want our votes, then let's talk. And their position, bizarrely, is no, we're not going to negotiate until you vote for what we want you to vote for, until basically you give up the one sliver leverage that we have in the current configuration of the Congress. And that just doesn't make any sense. So that's one set of issues, is the budget. The second set of issues, and these things do intersect, is the actions by the president that, to my mind, are illegal and are actually an authoritarian approach, acting more like a dictator, less like a democratically elected leader in a constitutional republic. I mentioned all of those programs that he has frozen. Those are programs that Congress appropriated and passed into law. Unilaterally, the president cannot just freeze those things, and yet he has over and over again, particularly targeting his political enemies, not even in any sort of policy justification, just trying to cut money to places that didn't vote for him, which is illegal, partisan, and a horrific way to run the government. He's done that. And then the tariffs that have been put into place are also a violation of law. Congress has the power to pass tariffs. Now, there is emergency provisions in there, and certain very specific things constitute an emergency, and we are not in those things. This is working its way up the courts. Every court to date has ruled that the tariffs are illegal. The Supreme Court, as it is wont to do these days, stepped in and said, well, we'll rule on it in a little while, but in the meantime, let the president do what he wants, which I think is the complete wrong approach, to let the president violate the law. Then we have the use of the U.S. military to basically invade U.S. cities, Los Angeles, Washington, D.C., Chicago, and now he was trying to do it in Portland. But a Trump-appointed judge on the West Coast said there is no emergency in Portland, and you can only call up the guard if there is, in fact, an emergency. And no, Mr. President, you can't just on your own decide that something is an emergency, even if it's not. But again, this is a clear violation of the law. The president has also used the Justice Department to punish his political foes and reward his political friends. He has pardoned all of the January 6th people. He has fired everyone in the Justice Department who worked on those January 6th prosecutions. All of this is beyond what the law should allow. It is the president acting as an autocrat. So there's other things. There's the whole, suing of media companies, using the FCC to threaten media companies to make sure they are more friendly to the president, basically trying to silence free speech that is critical of the president. He's attempting to fire Lisa Cook, I'm going to get my initials wrong here, the Fed board member, based on trumped up charges. It's interesting. You can't fire her to begin with. And then they said, well, they're doing a criminal investigation. Well, if you look at the details of the criminal investigation, there's only one flaw in it. There's no evidence that she committed the crime in question. The charges that he brought against James Comey, he had to fire several prosecutors who looked at it and said, yeah, no, there's nothing here. It's like, no, create something if you have to. That is an abuse of power that fundamentally threatens our democracy. Now, for a lot of members of Congress, this shutdown fight, this budget fight is about healthcare and about the Affordable Care Act tax credits that are set to expire that will drive up healthcare. And that is certainly important to me. I think that is an issue that we should talk about and we should push. I don't think it should be the only thing that we're talking about. The other aspect of the continuing resolution that we Democrats have put forward, which, by the way, we do have a provision to keep the government open that Republicans have rejected, in addition to dealing with the healthcare problem, it also changes the law to place harder restrictions on the president simply doing what he wants, which I think is crucially important. So both of those issues matter. And if, yes, we could simply vote to continue the government for another 5, 6, 7, 8 weeks. But now is one of the rare times that Republican leadership needs Democratic votes. And I do not think that we should simply vote for what the president has been doing. Now, we're all free to disagree about that. If you like the budget he's put together, if you don't mind having a more, I guess you could say, empowered president, I say autocrat, but to each their own, okay, but we don't have to vote for it. And we're not going to until they actually put something on the table that reflects the fact that if Democratic votes are going to be part of this, then Democratic priorities are going to have to be part of this as well. Priorities, which I will emphasize, we think should be American priorities. It's not partisan in that sense. I think healthcare coverage ought to be a bipartisan issue. I think making sure that the Justice Department is not the political tool of any one person ought to be a bipartisan issue. I think not sending U.S. troops into American cities to do domestic law enforcement at the whim of a president ought to be bipartisan. I think placing greater restrictions on what ICE is doing in community after community where they are terrorizing those community and targeting people who are not criminals, by the way, ought to be a bipartisan issue. So those are the issues that we want to raise. Now, connected to those two things is also my concern about what's going on with the United States military. You all saw this little joke performance that Secretary Hegseth and President Trump put on where they called in every general from all around the world, Quantico, basically to lecture them about how to run the military. But it goes way beyond that. When President Trump got elected, one of the first things he did is he fired every single inspector general and he fired all judge advocate generals, the people who are basically there to make sure that the rules are enforced. He has also fired dozens of different top leaders in the military based primarily on whether or not they are personally loyal to President Trump. We had a general who was in charge of the NSA Cyber Command. It's a combined command with the National Security Agency and our Cyber Command, General Hawk, who had strong bipartisan support for years. Laura Loomer found something on social media that she didn't like and told the president to fire him, and he did. We should not be looking for personal loyalty to the president and the military. We should be looking for loyalty to the United States Constitution, dedication, and ability to serve the national security interests of the American people. And I found Secretary Hegseth's speech and the president's speech both to be deeply disturbing in their approach. Secretary Hegseth placing an emphasis on, we shouldn't basically follow the rules. We should fight dirty, and that's the way to win. That's not the way to win if you're trying to persuade people that they should side with you. People committing crimes, even if they're in the military, they ought to be held accountable. Saying that they shouldn't be held accountable, I think, is very dangerous for the role the U.S. must play on the global stage. So we need a military that is not politicized. I believe that both Secretary Hegseth and President Trump are going to elaborate links to politicize the military and thereby undermining our national security message. There's a whole lot of other issues there in terms of how we're alienating all of our friends and allies, and I believe making America weaker because of that. But that's my basic set of concerns. And I want to get to your questions. So I was just looking at the clock there, make sure I don't go on too long. So I'll stop here. That's the basic fight we're in right now. No particular end in sight at the moment. Republicans are still saying, no, before we will negotiate with us, you have to vote for our plan, which is sort of the wrong way that negotiations is supposed to go. We're hoping they will change their mind soon, and we're going to keep pressing until they do. With that, I am happy to take your questions or comments. Dirk, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you very much, sir. So for everybody that's joined us, if you've got a question that you would like to ask Congressman Smith, please press *3 on your telephone keypad to enter the question queue. Again, to ask your question live on this call, please press *3. Our first caller on the line joining us is Hope in Renton. Hope, you are live with the Congressman. Go ahead with your question.
So since October 7th, 2023, the conservative estimate is that over
I'm sorry, I'm having a hard time understanding you.
Have been killed.
I'm having a hard time understanding
you. Could we get you to speak up, please?
Speak up and a little slower.
Can you hear me better now?
Yeah.
Okay. So since October 7th of 2023, the conservative estimate is that over 700,000 Palestinians in Gaza have been killed, mostly civilians, and at least 20,000 of them being children. The number of Palestinians facing famine is upwards of 500,000, and since May 27th, over 2,500 Palestinians have been killed at aid distribution sites alone, all with U.S. support. These are war crimes and have called genocide by the UN Human Rights Commission and even Israeli genocide scholars. In light of these obvious war crimes and genocide, will you unequivocally call for a full and complete arms embargo against Israel?
I think yes. At this point, until the offensive war in Gaza stops, we should stop supplying weapons to Israel. I do agree with that. And I'm working on a piece of legislation right now to do that. I see what the Trump administration is doing with a peace agreement. We've seen that before. I think more pressure needs to be applied to the Israeli government. So yes, I think we need to restrict arms sales to Israel.
All right, moving on. Our next question comes from Corey in Mercer Island. Corey, you're live with the Congressman. What's on your mind?
Thank you, Congressman Smith, for taking the time to be accessible to your constituents and everybody in Washington. I've got a couple of questions and things that I'm concerned with. One is the budget and the talking points that are surrounding it, and how the Republicans are framing this as, 1 point whatever billion trillion dollars that goes towards funding undocumented, people in this country, which is completely not true. It doesn't say that anywhere in the bill. Patty Murray did a great job of explaining that in a recent post. And I think that every Democrat should be carrying that message as the primary talking point to combat the Republican talking points. And then I'll ask my second one. You can ask them both. Second one is regarding tariffs. Mercer Island remodeling. We're out of Mercer Island. We work in the surrounding area, and we're starting to get hit and start to see more anticipation and increases on the cost of materials due to tariffs that are being imported from outside of the country. Like countertops, stone coming out of the country, those things are going to be hit with a 60, 70, 80% increase in cost, which is going to, make people not be able to afford what they want to do in their houses, which is going to slow the market down for construction companies like ours. Once again, thanks for taking the time.
Yeah, no, those are two really important issues. And what I've said, and I've been on a number of different TV shows, and we've put this out publicly on social media, what the Republicans are saying about the Affordable Care Act and undocumented immigrants is just a bald-faced lie. And I've called it that. I don't think we should mince words. It is a lie. The ACA very specifically says that undocumented immigrants do not qualify for benefits. There is no part of this that is going to them. Republicans, they don't want to talk about health care because they know that their policy is terrible. So they try to bring it back to immigration where they feel like they're on safer ground, but it's a complete lie, and we ought to call it a lie. As far as the dollar amount, they've been floating this $1.5 trillion amount. That's not what it would cost. That's over 10 years to begin with, and it is about a third of that. But the other point that I've made is it's about the broader budget, all right? I want to see those tax cuts reversed. I didn't even mention in my opening remarks the additional $170 billion that they gave to ICE and to the Department of Homeland Security, which is completely unnecessary. I'd just start with, let's take that $170 billion back and let's put it towards reducing people's healthcare costs. So you can't let them pigeonhole the budget discussion around simply one issue of healthcare when they have wasted so much money and given away so much money on tax cuts. Like I said, this continuing resolution is about voting for the Republican budget, and we should not vote for that. On tariffs, the impact is devastating. Look, the Trump administration is doing their best to lie about that impact, but it is a massive tax increase across the board. We've put tariffs on literally not quite literally, almost every country in the world. And it's really having an impact. And I'm glad you mentioned the specific impact on your small business. That's where it impacts the most. I've read so many stories and talked to so many people who have literally gone out of business because the product that they're coming in, the prices have gone up to the point where they can't survive. Small businesses do not have the margins that large businesses do, and they get buried by this. And again, I want to emphasize those tariffs are illegal. The President of the United States is not supposed to unilaterally be able to impose tariffs. Congress imposes tariffs. So I think that needs to be part of what this continuing resolution budget fight is about as well, is stopping the illegal actions of the Trump administration. And I personally think we ought to talk about undoing the tariffs as part of this discussion right now. Because, and the thing about tariffs, it takes a while for the full effect to have. As you know, you're a business person, you've got your orders back a month or two. But then when that runs out, the tariffs hit, and we're really starting to see the impact in terms of job losses, businesses going under, and costs going up through the ceiling on a wide variety of products for the American people. So I think we need to speak up against those tariffs, and I appreciate the example you cite as one of many about the incredibly devastating impact that those tariffs are having on people in this country.
So don't forget, the Congressman and his staff put out a very informative e-newsletter, and during this live telephone town hall, you can get signed up to receive that. Simply press *6 right now on your telephone keypad to get enrolled. Again, Get signed up to receive the e-newsletter from the congressman and his staff by pressing *6 on your telephone keypad. Plus, if you've got a question on your mind, all you need to do is press *3 to enter the question queue. Now we've got Nolan in Seattle joining us. Nolan, you are live with the congressman. What is your question?
Hey, can you hear me? Just want to ask
Yes,
first.
I can.
Okay, I'm still thinking about what Hope asked. You said you would support a restriction on arms sales to Israel, but what I'm curious about is, given that you are the ranking member of the House Armed Services Committee, how specifically would you do that? Because just saying that you support a
Sure.
restriction is very vague, and this is something that the ICJ and the UN and even Israeli scholars have all been using the word genocide. It's been declared a genocide by all measurable metrics, and I just want something concrete from you, not to just say yes and move
Yeah, I
on.
got it.
So how would you specifically do that?
Yeah, well, a couple of, I mean, first of all, ranking member of the Armed Services Committee, we don't actually have jurisdiction over arms sales. Now, as a member of Congress, it matters, but me being on the Armed Services Committee doesn't really have anything to do with that issue. But second, I want to introduce a piece of legislation that basically says we will not sell arms to Israel until they stop offensive operations in Gaza and until they massively increase humanitarian aid. Second, and third, until they begin to work with alternatives to Hamas. That's one of the main things that I strongly disagree with what Netanyahu has been doing for 15 years, which is Hamas is awful, evil, awful, and terrible. You may disagree with me on that, but I feel very strongly about that. And I think that that's true. But what Netanyahu has done is he has impeded any ability of any reasonable alternative to Hamas to grow up and have any power and influence so that Hamas can be pushed aside. So those three things. I got a first draft of a piece of legislation that would do that. I put out a statement a month ago, 2 months ago now, calling for that. And we're going to introduce a piece of legislation to put that basic restriction on that until those three things happen. There might be a couple others, but those are the three big things that we want to see changed before we begin, any sale of arms to Israel.
All right. Next, we've got Patty in Auburn joining us. Hi, Patty. You're live. Go ahead with your question.
Hi, Congressman. Thank you very much for taking this time. I actually have two questions. The
Sure.
first one being, can the Speaker of the House, Mr. Johnson, be compelled to recognize the newly elected representative from Arizona so that maybe you guys could get some stuff done?
Yes.
And second, can he be compelled?
I'm sorry. That's a complicated. Get you. Yeah, I'll answer that one first.
Okay.
I don't know the exact rules of that. Yes, I think he could be compelled. I think we should file a lawsuit immediately that she is the duly elected and certified representative from Arizona, and he is blocking her ability to serve.
Right.
We cannot compel him through the House. We can compel him by a vote, but it would take a majority vote.
Okay.
Republicans won't
Right.
do that. So I think we need to sue. Yeah, and look, this is part of what I want people to understand about this shutdown. And I didn't say this up front. I should have said this. I understand that not funding the government past October 1st has profound impacts on a lot of people. People don't get paid, services get restricted, challenges erupt all across the federal government. I understand that, but simply acquiescing to the leadership here when they do things like, that's unimaginable. If you told me when I first got to Congress that a Speaker of the House would block a member of the opposite party from getting appointed for purely political reasons, that is contrary to every principle of our representative democracy. And we
Right.
simply have to stand up and fight back against it. So I think we're going to have to file a lawsuit.
Oh, darn. My second question is, are there any articles of impeachment being drafted against the president, Pam Bondi,
Yeah.
or any Supreme Court justices?
Yeah, and here's where you and I, we might part ways with some of the people here. Yeah, we've drafted some articles of impeachment. There's a variety of different against different people. I don't personally want to go down the impeachment road because it is a fight we will lose. We do not have 2/3 of the Senate. Well, certainly right now we don't. The House wouldn't even bring it up. I don't want to give the president a victory. I want to focus on the things where we ought to be able to beat him, which is on tariffs, on healthcare, on food security, on the debt and the deficit, on his misuse of the military, on the ICE and immigration raids that he's doing all across the country that are terrorizing communities. We have a whole host of issues that the public is with us on. Now, if you gave me a path to successfully impeaching him and removing him from office, I would be all over that in the blink of an eye. But I don't want to start down a path that's just going to give him an easy win. So, yeah, that's being talked about, but I really want to focus on some of these other issues where I think we're in a stronger position.
Okay. Thank you for answering my questions, Congressman.
Thank you.
If you've got a question on your mind, now is a great time to press *3 to enter the question queue and get in live on this call. It is a live telephone town hall with Congressman Adam Smith. Don't forget, the Congressman and his staff put out a very informative e-newsletter. You can subscribe to that right now by pressing *6 on your telephone keypad. Next up, we've got Trevor joining us from Auburn. Trevor, what's on your mind?
Hey there, can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can. How are you?
Good, how are you doing?
Great.
Good. So my question is, obviously with the shutdown, the president has started withholding a lot of tax dollars from federal tax dollars towards important programs to states that he just doesn't like or states that didn't vote for him. And I was seeing that the governor of Maine had announced that they're not going to put any of their state tax dollars towards the federal pool going forward until that reverses course. I was curious, especially with Trump giving $20 billion to another country recently, if we had any course of action that maybe our state would do to kind of retaliate against that.
Yeah, two things about that. First of all, it's not just since the shutdown. I mean, this is something that Trump is trying. Oh, Democrats are shutting down the government, so now I'm going to do this. He's been doing this for 9 months. All right. He's been blocking funds going to blue states and blue communities. There was a major flood in Texas. They got FEMA money. There was a major flood in Maryland. They didn't. All right. He's been doing this long before the shutdown started. So the notion that somehow this triggered it is wrong. But you hit upon a really crucial point that I mentioned. I did an interview on MSNBC 2 days ago now, I guess, in which I raised this very issue that, look, if actually it was yesterday, sorry, why are we paying taxes to the federal government? I mean, if Trump says, if you're a blue state and you're a Democratic state, I'm not going to give you any money. And I'll tell you something, states like Washington, we put more money into the federal government than we get back. It is the red states that actually benefit. They put less in than they get back. And if Trump is going to turn the government into this partisan vehicle, I think, states that are being punished in this way should withhold taxes and file lawsuits and say he's in fundamental violation of the contract here. All right. We're giving him money. He's not keeping up his end of the bargain. So yes, I think that is a conversation we need to have. I need to give Nick Brown, our Attorney General, and our governor a call and say, what are we going to do about this? Because, I mean, it's unbelievable, this partisan approach that is jeopardizing our representative democracy in such a fundamental way.
I completely agree. Thank you for the answer.
Thank you.
All right, next up, we've got Mark in Renton joining us. Mark, you're live with the Congressman. Go ahead with your question now.
Yes, Congressman, I appreciate the time here. My concern is the validity of upcoming elections, and I want to know what's being done to make sure that they're 100% secure and oversights that we may have as Democrats to make sure that there's no shenanigans being entertained or pursued in all the upcoming elections.
Yeah, no, we are pursuing an aggressive legal strategy in every state and every district out there to monitor the elections, to make sure that they're free and fair. And that's part of it. I think that the two things that concern me the most are, number one, efforts in red states to restrict access to voting. Houston in 2024, they have, you can mail in your ballots. You can also have a drop box to drop in your ballot. I think they have restrictions on mail-in ballots, but drop box. They restricted Houston, and they only allowed them one drop box in the entire city, fourth largest city in America. There have been purges of the voter roll. So we do have aggressive legal action that the various different aspects of the Democratic Party are taking to get voters back on the rolls, to allow them to stay on the rolls and all that. We're fighting that. But the second thing that we need to be on the lookout for, and which people need to be aware of when they vote, is in red states where Democrats win close elections, just like we're dealing with our newly elected member from Arizona, who they're blocking from being sworn in, will they block the certification of elections that Democrats win? I would not put it past them. They tried something very similar to this in North Carolina. North Carolina had a really close judicial race this last cycle. But at the end of it, the Democrat wound up winning. I forget, it was in the low hundreds, I think, a fairly close election. And they just tried to block certification. Fortunately, there were enough Republicans in North Carolina who believed in the rule of law and represented democracy that eventually they finally did certify it. But we are going to have to fight certification in every close election all across this country to make sure that they don't block it from being certified. I have very little doubt that Trump and the MAGA folks will do everything they can to cheat in these elections. We're seeing it with their efforts to redistrict midterm. And so, we are very much aware of that threat and that challenge. And it makes me very sad and very angry that we even have to think about that. But I think we have to know the situation we're in, and we have to be prepared for it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next caller with a question, we've got Sandra in Seattle joining us. Hi, Sandra. You are live on the call. Go ahead with your question now.
Yeah, hi. Thanks for having this town hall. I actually just had a comment, and that is that I am a federal worker. I am accepted, so I'm currently working, but I just wanted to thank the Democrats for taking a stand and assure you that we're ready to wait it out. So I would just say to you and all your colleagues, hold the line and we'll make it through.
Well, thank you. That means a great deal. I really want to thank you and every single federal employee. The amount of abuse that federal employees have had to put up with in the last 9 months. And I really want people to understand this. So hundreds of thousands of federal employees have been fired, but in many instances, even more than that, have been fired. And then like a week or two later, when there were lawsuits saying, no, it's illegal to fire them, in some cases, the president has said, okay, now we'll bring you. But then they said, no, you're fired. It's gone back and forth. I spoke with one federal employee several months ago who got fired, hired back, fired again, then finally hired back, but wouldn't get her benefits, couldn't get her health care benefits turned back on. The abuse that federal employees have taken from this administration is off the charts, and it is weakening this country and weakening our federal government. You see what's happening at CDC and NIH, where you cannot be independent. You have to simply salute the president's agenda, and also, in the case of the U.S. military, pledge loyalty to him personally in a way that has made it very difficult for federal employees to do their job. So as you read all these stories, when Trump and the Republicans say, well, because of the shutdown, what choice? They have been doing this from day one in a way that is weakening our country and blocking the ability of people to get the services they need. Social Security, Medicare, great example. Even if you haven't made any cuts to Social Security or Medicare, they've made cuts to the Social Security Administration so that you can't get your benefits because there's no one there to answer the phones. At one point, they said you had to come in person. You couldn't do it online or over the phone. So they've done everything they can to gum up the works of the federal government actually functioning. And federal employees have borne the brunt of that. So thank you. I appreciate that comment. I will definitely take it to heart. And thank you for your service.
If you've got a question, please press *3 on your telephone keypad to enter the question queue. Again, press *3 to ask a question of Congressman Smith. Next caller with a question, we've got Pat from Renton on the line. Pat, welcome to the call. Go ahead with your question.
Yes, hello, Congressman. My question is in regards to Epstein and President Trump. Do we have any updates in regards to that?
Well, that's actually connected to that issue of not allowing the woman from Arizona who won the election to be sworn in. We are one signature short of the discharge petition that would force a vote on the bill requiring the release of the Epstein files. As soon as Ms. Grijalva from Arizona gets sworn in, she will sign that discharge petition and that vote will be forced, which is also part of the reason why Mike Johnson is violating the law and blocking her ability to be sworn in. So that's one big piece of the update. You've seen some of the stories leak out about Trump's connection to Epstein. But I really want people to understand just how awful this is, because it was Trump and the MAGA people who drove the Epstein story. Remember, it was this whole Democrats are this secret cabal of pedophiles running our country, and Epstein was connected to all of them, and this was all going to come out, and all the Democratic leadership was going to be, implicated and everything. And then, of course, they won, and the files were right there, and the truth was right there. And then all of a sudden, no, nothing to see here. We're not going to look at that. We're not going to see any of that. And all that has come out is Trump's close ties to Epstein, as I'm sure you've all seen the documented examples of that. So, this is a serious, serious issue about the lies and misinformation that Trump and his people are peddling. And let's let the truth out. We're pretty close to getting the votes to force that issue and make sure that it doesn't go away.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next we're joined by Stephen in Bellevue. Stephen, you are live with Congressman Smith. What's your question?
Yes, can you hear me okay?
I can, yes.
Excellent, thank you. So I have a question that pertains to really the rapid evolution of technology. And is there room to find common ground with the opposition, maybe the Luddite wing of the Republican Party, to work aggressively to put in frameworks and anticipatory measures about the rapid change of technology, right? What I'm seeing is lots of jobs. Customer service agents are being replaced by chatbots. Most of them are useless chatbots. And software engineers are losing jobs. And so, how do we look forward into the future at the federal level to make sure that there is a good quality of life for all the remaining human beings? That's my question.
Yeah, no, I think there is room for a bipartisan discussion on this. Now, not with everybody, obviously, but I think there are Republicans and Democrats alike who are deeply concerned about where technology is taking us. Its impact on the job market and people's ability to work, but also the impact on just, basic information, the ability of humans to have control of our own destinies. And I think this should be regulated. I think it shouldn't be out of control. I frankly think we missed the boat when it came to smartphones and the internet, and that was unregulated. Too much monopoly of power was allowed to be accumulated, and too little regulation on how this was harming communities, certainly children, but beyond that. I just think there's a role for society at large to regulate that. Now, a lot of times you will hear, libertarians, more conservative people say, well, the government shouldn't be interfering with the private sector. But keep in mind, if the government is working the way it's supposed to, the government is supposed to be the voice of the people. And I think the people, broadly speaking, should have a say in this. It shouldn't be simply left to a handful of billionaires who develop the technology for their own purposes. And I think and I know actually that there are Republicans who agree with me on that. And I agree with you. I think this is an issue we ought to look for ways to work together and regulate it to protect the human rights, quite frankly.
So it's so important to stay updated and informed, and an easy way to do that is to get subscribed to the Congressman's e-newsletter. Do that right now by pressing *6 on your telephone keypad. Again, get signed up for the very informative e-newsletter that the Congressman and his staff put out. All you need to do is press *6 right now to get enrolled. Our next caller, we've got Kathy from Kent with a question. Kathy, you are live with Congressman Smith. What's your question? Hello, Kathy.
Oh, hello?
Hi.
Kathy,
Yes.
you're live.
Kathy,
Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm just
Okay.
looking at everything right now. Like, mine is more of a comment as in alignment with the federal worker. Just please just don't give up. This is just absolute insanity. Everybody I know, they're on edge. Everybody's worried and like, we can't give up, but we got to keep the hope. And I mean, it's very worrisome what's going on. I don't understand it, and thank you for this, actually. And I just really appreciate it, and I'll be here to support you. You know, from Kent, Washington, and it's just crazy. I've never seen in my whole years. I've never seen anything like. He needs to be stopped. I wish there was like a quicker way to stop the insanity of everything that's going on. I mean, just you guys stand your ground. You know, I'll vote. Just please don't give up. You know, because we're relying on you, and we're hoping for everything to get better.
I appreciate that.
I just want to tell you thank you, and it's going to be an uphill battle, but we can't give up. Can't let him bully everybody like that. It's just so it goes against everything, like everything that goes on in the world. It's like, wow, you know, we're alienated by everybody now, and it's like it's crazy. But I wanted to thank you, and just stand your ground, please. Have to stand there. Just we can't let him do this.
I completely agree. And just so you know, I always say I am temperamentally opposed to giving up, just on general principle. So I'm with you. I think we need to really focus this fight. I think that's one real good opportunity with the budget shutdown is an issue that gets people's attention. And hopefully it will shine a light on some of the more extreme policies that we've been talking about tonight that President Trump has implemented. And I want people to know on this call, and I know not everyone is happy with this, but by and large, I'm a guy who likes to work with people and get things done. I'm not looking for a revolution or to, change the world. I want to figure out how can we, work with people we disagree with, bring people together, solve problems, build coalitions, get that done. That's been my approach throughout the bulk of my career. But that's not the approach that's going to work right now. You have to adapt to circumstances. And what President Trump and his administration are doing is unprecedented. And I think a profound threat to our very democracy. And I also think the policies are terrible. I don't know if I should say this on an open line. I've jokingly referred to Donald Trump as being the bozo the clown of dictators, which is to say that he's not even very good at it. The policies that he's implementing are very damaging to the country. The tariffs. Let's just focus for a moment on all of these energy projects that he's cutting. He's cutting wind and solar and hydrogen energy projects just because he doesn't like alternative energy. But what that's doing is it is reducing the amount of energy that we have available to us at a time when we desperately need more. There's more and more demand for energy. And if you cut all of these projects, we're not going to have enough energy to go around. And prices are already going up because of this. I mean, that's just stupid. Placing tariffs on every country in the world. Okay, we're trying to compete with China, and I get that, and I support that. But part of competing with China is having other countries on our side. And now we've alienated every single one of them by placing tariffs on all of them. I mean, So it's a threat to democracy, and it is also, I hope people understand, a threat to our well-being as a country. I mean, you can't. We're increasingly not getting access to vaccines. We're not doing the basic research that is necessary to solve some of the healthcare crises that are in front of us. On issue after issue, I think we do have to stand and fight and try to stop this. And I think this is an opportunity to really begin that process. And I fully intend to take full advantage of it. And I believe my colleagues feel the same way. So thank you for that support, and we will keep fighting.
Looks like our next caller is Sheila from Kent. Sheila, you are live with Congressman Smith. What's your question?
Congressman, I'd just like to know where all the money is going from all these federal workers that he has fired. What's he doing with all that money? His airplane, he goes places and opens up a golf course, and we have to pay for that. Someone dies, and we have to pay for the airplane to take him back to the state he came from. That's one question. The other question I have is, this person is so illiterate and ignorant. He's an embarrassment. He's definitely comes across as being stupid. Why are so many people afraid of him? He's just embarrassed the whole United States, and we're just nothing now but a laughing stock. How do we ever stop him?
Yeah. Well, if you looked at that 73-minute speech that he gave to the assembled generals and admirals on Tuesday, that's the only word. And actually, I don't swear on these forums, so I'll leave out that aspect of it. But an embarrassment is what occurred to me as the ranking member on the Armed Services Committee, working on national security, thinking about how our partners and our adversaries, for that matter, looked at that speech. I mean, how could you look at that and not just laugh and say this country has become a joke that we can't even take seriously anymore? I mean, he's talking about the aesthetic beauty of a battleship and rambling all in 1,000 different directions. Meanwhile, putting in place so many policies that are simply about his ego and his bottom line. I mean, he's literally made billions of dollars as president off of his crypto schemes. He's lining his pockets at our expense. So yes, I agree with you. And again, I have found many Republicans over the course of my career that I can work with. I don't always agree with them, but I can certainly work with them. This is beyond the pale. This is in a different place that, again, fundamentally threatens our democracy. As far as why he is so popular, I will say that, number one, we have gotten to the point where we are looking more for entertainment in our elected leaders than we are substance, which is a problem. And look, you go to one of Trump's rallies, I have an interesting sense of humor. He is occasionally funny, all right, except for the fact that he's running the country. I mean, it's definitely bizarre and different than anything you've ever seen from a politician before. So I guess in that sense, it's entertaining. But the substance is being lost. The other issue that I have to approach delicately with this crowd is there have been some legitimate concerns about how Democrats govern. I think we could have done better. I do. All right. I don't think we did a good enough job of securing the border. I look at King County and I am concerned about how we have approached homelessness and crime and drug abuse and behavioral health and housing. We don't build enough housing. I think our government needs to be more efficient and more effective. I think that we went too far in terms of focusing on identity politics and a variety of different issues, and that alienated a lot of people. We have major challenges in our education system because we've moved away from having standards. And it's not equity to have everybody fail. Okay. We want to raise everybody up. So mistakes were made. And I think Trump stepped into that void and into our entertainment culture and took advantage of it. And then, and I will confess this part, I don't understand. I don't. I like to sort of examine and think where people are coming from and come up with explanations for it. Most of the time I can. But the degree to which President Trump has taken hold of such a significant chunk of our country, not a majority by any stretch of the imagination, but a significant enough chunk to really control the Republican Party. The reason Republicans are afraid of him is because they don't think they can win in a primary if he's on the other side. And frankly, it's played out that way. For some reason, Republican primaries, they're siding with Trump over other people, and election after election has cowed them. But even with that, that's no excuse. And please don't misunderstand what I just said. That is no excuse for Republicans who I know better, who I know don't support what the president is doing to the U.S. military, or what he is doing on tariffs, or what he did to foreign aid, or a whole host of other issues, to not speak out. So what the rest of us have to do is keep the pressure on, to force them to see what is happening, to hear from their constituents, and force them to speak out. Somebody said this a while ago, and I've been stealing the line for quite a while. We got to get to the point where Republican members of Congress fear their voters more than they fear Donald Trump. And to do that, we have to focus on issues like healthcare. We have to focus on issues like tariff. So we have to focus on the issues where the president is clearly harming people in this country. So that's what we're going to do.
Well, don't take too long.
Yeah. Hey, 24/7, 365. I'm moving as fast as I can, but I wish I could give you a different answer, but it takes time to persuade people, even if you're working at it every second of the day.
It looks like we have time for just one more question, and that honor goes to Liza in Kent. Liza, you are live. Go ahead with your question, please.
Hello, Congressman.
Hello.
I am retired, but I am very active and concerned about what's going on. I vote always, every election. I boycott businesses that I feel are not in line with things as they should be. I speak out, I protest, I volunteer, I donate what I can, but I don't feel like it all makes a whole lot of difference right now, and I want to know what else we can do as mere citizens to make a big impact.
Yeah. Well, that's what you can do. And I know this is very frustrating. And I've worked in politics for quite a while. And, one of the aspects of politics, it usually takes time. It doesn't usually happen immediately. You have to build coalitions, you have to build support, you have to refine your message, and you have to keep at it every day to slowly start making a difference. I wish I had a different answer for you. Because believe me, I want to wake up tomorrow and begin the rebuilding process. Okay, Trump's not president. We got some people we can work with. How do we begin to fix this? I do, but it's going to take time. And that should not dissuade you in the least bit from continuing and being persistent and making progress one step at a time. Because we just have to keep fighting at this every day. And I will say something I said in answer to the last question. Part of this also is I do think those folks who don't support President Trump, and that's not just Democrats, by the way, there's independents and Republicans, wide group of people who don't think this is the right direction to go in. We need to build an alternative. We need to build a set of policies that the American people can get behind and believe in. Too many people think it just doesn't matter. I had so many people tell me, what's the difference between Trump and Kamala Harris? And believe me, every time I heard that, I fought back hard and passionately. But there is that belief out there. It's completely wrong in my view. But we have to build an alternative. And also we have to build an understanding that whether it's Kamala Harris or Donald Trump or me or anybody else, no one of us is going to solve every single problem. We got some significant challenges in this country. Income inequality is the number one biggest challenge we have. You're not going to fix that overnight. We need a better healthcare system. We need a better education system. We need a better tax system. We need to reform and regulate this system. But my core belief, and I'll go ahead and wrap up on this, I think it's a good question to wrap up on, is that the battle that we face in this country is really over equality and opportunity. And this is something that's, been a challenge since the dawn of civilization and has accelerated during the industrialization and the rapid pace of technology that has allowed certain people to make massive amounts of money while others are left behind. How do you confront that? How do you deal with the realities of how capitalism leaves so many people behind? And I know a lot of people look for that magic answer. We're going to get rid of capitalism. We're going to fundamentally change human nature. I don't believe in that. What I believe is you have to regulate it and reform it. And I'll give you 3 periods in American history where we successfully did that. At the turn of the 20th century, the Gilded Age, we had a massive concentration of wealth problem. And we did it by not getting rid of capitalism or getting rid of our representative democracy. We did it with reform. We put in an income tax. We did antitrust laws. We did the Fair Labor Standards Act. We did child labor to make it a fairer and better society. In the New Deal, Franklin Roosevelt implemented all manner of different programs to create more jobs and create more equality, including Social Security. And then during the Great Society, again, no big revolution, but the Great Society gave us Medicare, Medicaid, the Voting Rights Act, several other things that I'm forgetting off the top of my head. But it was an effort to work to make our society more fair and more equal and to create more opportunity. And that's what we have to do. And we have to show the American people that we can offer that. I think that's part of what we have to do while we speak out loudly and constantly against the horrible policies of this administration. You do those 2 things in concert, then you begin to build a coalition large enough to elect the right people and get the support for the right issues. But yeah, it takes time and persistence. I used to have this line whenever people would express a frustration like you expressed to me, where I would say, having worked in politics for a while, you got to be patient and persistent. Well, I've amended that line in light of the Trump administration. I think you have to be impatient and persistent. There has to be a sense of urgency, but you can't give up just because we haven't solved the problem. You got to keep pushing until you do. Well, thank you all very much for participating in this call. I'm going to do another one of these on Thursday because I think there's a lot happening and I want to make sure that I stay in touch. And I just want to close with where I usually close, which is this is a great opportunity, great questions, great comments. I hope my comments have given you a little better idea about what's going on, but this is not your only opportunity. My staff, shutdown or no shutdown, is working full time, both in the district and back here in DC. Please contact us, reach out to us, by email, text, phone call, however you want to get in touch with us. Please do. We'll try to answer your questions, address whatever issue you can as quickly as we possibly can. And thank you very much. Thanks, Dirk, for moderating. And I hope you all have a good evening. And go Mariners. Do have to still remember that there are some seemingly trivial things that we should still focus on. I'm very happy with the win last night, and I hope they can win the series. Thank you very much. Appreciate you spending some time with us.
Now, as we wrap up this event, please make a note. You can stay up to date on Congressman Smith's work by following him on Facebook, X, Instagram, and YouTube with the handle @RepAdamSmith, as well as on Blue Sky, the handle @adamsmith.house.gov. So at this point in the call, if you'd like to subscribe to the Congressman's e-newsletter, just stay on the line and leave your name and email address after the tone. Thank you for sharing your time with us this evening. We hope you stay healthy and safe and have a great night. This concludes our event. Goodbye.